The year 1945 stands as a pivotal moment in human history. World War II raged across the globe, consuming nations and shattering lives. Amidst the darkness, 1945 held the promise of change. Allied forces pushed back against tyranny on multiple fronts. From Normandy to the Pacific, the fight for freedom raged on. 1945 would reshape the geopolitical landscape for generations. By April 1945, the Nazi regime was teetering on the brink of collapse. Soviet forces were closing in on Berlin, the heart of the Third Reich. Adolf Hitler, once a symbol of power and terror, was now a broken man, holed up in his underground bunker beneath the crumbling city. The Führer's dreams of a 1,000-year Reich were crumbling around him as the once mighty Wehrmacht was pushed back on all fronts. On April 30, 1945, with Soviet troops just blocks away, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. His reign of terror, which had plunged the world into darkness, was finally over. The news of Hitler's death sent shockwaves around the world. For many it was a moment of immense relief, signaling the end of a nightmare. Yet, the war was not over. German forces, though leaderless and demoralized, continued to fight on. The fall of Berlin to the Soviets was a symbolic victory of immense proportions. The city, once the beating heart of the Nazi war machine, was now a shattered ruin, a testament to the devastating power of modern warfare. The Soviet flag, raised triumphantly over the Reichstag building, marked the end of an era. On May 7, 1945, in Reims, France, General Alfred Jodl, representing the German High Command, signed the instrument of unconditional surrender. May 8, 1945 will forever be etched in history as Victory in Europe Day or VE Day. It was a day of unbridled joy and relief as news of Germany's surrender spread across the globe. Millions took to the streets to celebrate, from the Champs-Élysées in Paris to Times Square in New York City. Church bells rang out, music filled the air, and strangers embraced as the weight of war lifted from their shoulders. In London, crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, where King George VI and Prime Minister Winston Churchill appeared on the balcony to greet the cheering throngs. Churchill, the indomitable wartime leader who had rallied the British people during their darkest hour, addressed the nation declaring, "This is your victory." Across the Atlantic, President Harry S. Truman addressed the American people from the White House proclaiming, "This is a victory of more than arms alone. This is a victory of liberty over tyranny." He dedicated the victory to his predecessor, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had guided the nation through the darkest days of the war, but had passed away just weeks before the triumph in Europe. The celebrations, while joyous, were tinged with sadness and remembrance for the millions who had perished during the conflict. Families mourned, loved ones lost, and nations grappled with the immense cost of victory. The scars of war, both physical and emotional, would take generations to heal. While victory was declared in Europe, the war in the Pacific raged on. Imperial Japan, led by the fanatical militarist government of Hideki Tojo, refused to surrender. Japanese soldiers, indoctrinated with a code of Bushido that valued death over surrender, fought with ferocious tenacity. The Pacific War was a brutal conflict, characterized by fierce island battles and horrific casualties on both sides. The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought in February and March of 1945, exemplified the brutality of the Pacific conflict. The island, heavily fortified by the Japanese, became a symbol of their resolve. The iconic photograph of U.S. Marines raising the American flag atop Mount Suribachi captured the spirit of American determination in the face of fierce resistance. The Battle of Okinawa, which raged from April to June of 1945, was even more costly. The island, the largest and most populous of the Ryukyu Islands, was seen as a stepping stone to a potential invasion of the Japanese mainland. The Allied victories at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, while costly, brought them closer to Japan and put increasing pressure on the Tojo government. In July 1945, the United States successfully tested a new weapon of unimaginable power, the atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project, a top-secret research and development program, had been working tirelessly for years to unlock the secrets of atomic energy. The successful test at Alamogordo, New Mexico, ushered in the atomic age, forever altering the course of human history. The decision to use the atomic bomb against Japan remains one of the most controversial in history. President Truman, facing the prospect of a costly invasion of the Japanese mainland, made the fateful decision to unleash the destructive power of the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, a major industrial city and military port. The bomb, nicknamed Little Boy, detonated with the force of approximately 15,000 tons of TNT, instantly killing an estimated 80,000 people and injuring tens of thousands more. 3 days later, on August 9, a second atomic bomb, Fat Man, was dropped on Nagasaki, another major Japanese city. The combined death toll from the two bombings, including those who died from radiation sickness in the weeks and months that followed, is estimated to be between 129,000 and 226,000. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had a profound impact on the course of the war. Faced with the unprecedented destructive power of the atomic bomb and the Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan on August 8, Emperor Hirohito made the historic decision to surrender. In a radio address to the Japanese people on August 15, 1945, the emperor announced Japan's unconditional surrender, bringing an end to World War II. On September 2, 1945, the formal surrender ceremony took place aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. General Douglas MacArthur, Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers, presided over the ceremony, accepting Japan's surrender on behalf of the Allied nations. Japanese Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu and General Yoshijiro Umezu signed the Japanese Instrument of Surrender, marking the official end of the global conflict. The world erupted in celebration as news of Japan's surrender spread. After 6 long years of war, peace had finally returned. The world had survived the deadliest conflict in human history, and a new era was dawning. As the guns fell silent, the world began to grapple with the immense human cost of the war. The conflict had left an indelible mark on the global psyche, forever altering our understanding of warfare and the fragility of peace. One of the most horrific legacies of the war was the Holocaust, the systematic genocide perpetrated by Nazi Germany against Jews and other minority groups. As Allied forces advanced across Europe, they liberated concentration camps, revealing the true extent of Nazi atrocities. The images of emaciated prisoners, mass graves, and gas chambers shocked the world. The Holocaust stood as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred and intolerance. Millions had been displaced from their homes, cities lay in ruins, and economies were shattered. The task of rebuilding and reconciliation seemed daunting, but the human spirit, as it so often does, proved resilient. The end of World War II marked the beginning of a new era in international relations. The old order, dominated by European powers, had crumbled, replaced by a bipolar world dominated by the United States and the Soviet Union. In 1945, representatives from 50 nations gathered in San Francisco to establish the United Nations, a new international organization dedicated to maintaining peace and promoting cooperation among nations. The UN Charter, signed on June 26, 1945, outlined the organization's goals and principles. The founding of the UN represented a collective desire to prevent future conflicts and build a more just and peaceful world. Despite the hope represented by the UN, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union grew in the post-war years. The year 1945 stands as a pivotal moment in human history, a year that witnessed the end of one global conflict and the seeds of another. It was a year of immense loss, unimaginable cruelty, and inspiring courage. The decisions made and the lessons learned in 1945 continue to shape our world today. The legacy of 1945 is complex and multifaceted. The horrors of World War II, particularly the Holocaust, serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred and intolerance. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki raised profound moral questions about the use of weapons of mass destruction and the long-term consequences of technological advancement. Yet, 1945 also bequeathed a legacy of hope. The founding of the United Nations, while imperfect, represented a collective desire to prevent future conflicts and build a more just and peaceful world. The post-war period witnessed a surge in international cooperation and the establishment of new institutions dedicated to promoting economic development and human rights. As we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, the lessons of 1945 remain as relevant as ever.